Hello everyone, this is Collector of All Things, and I have another firearm from Denix Replica Company, and what I have in front of you is the Griswold and Gunnison. This is a Civil War era handgun. This is what we call a percussion revolver, and really what that means is that this uses not necessarily a shell, like in my last video with the Peacemaker, but this uses separate components to make the projectile fire. And it's a really neat design. It is a beautiful replica. This one is, like I said, Civil War era, and Griswold and Gunnison was actually for the South, so the Confederate Army. And what they did was, in the South, they needed weapons, they needed guns, and they couldn't rely on the North, obviously, because it was a Civil War. So what they did is the actual government contracted out to local manufacturers, and they found this brand, this company in Georgia. They started making their handguns. They called it Griswold and Gunnison, but it was actually a replica of the Northern Colt Navy. And this was a naval handgun made by Colt, very popular design, very well done. Colt was a prolific manufacturer back then, and as you can see, it's a very long gun, so you can whack things. This is a single action revolver, much like the Peacemaker that I showed in my last video. But what differs is this is actually an older design. So how a percussion revolver works is you have what's called, another name for a percussion revolver would be a ball and cap. And the reason why they call it a ball is because the projectile is actually a lead ball. And that goes in the front, right here in the barrel. And then the cap, which goes here, which is the spark mechanism. So what they would do is they would put the cap here. They'd load the gunpowder in the front. They put the lead ball in after it. And then they would put a wadding material to keep the ball in so it doesn't slide out. And then they would put a type of kind of viscous material, like it almost looks like Vaseline, to weatherproof the front end so that nothing got wet inside or any would slide out. And then they would fire it. And it takes a longer than obviously loading a bullet inside to get this thing to fire. But what's great is they knew that. So one thing is pushing the ball inside and getting it packed down. You need something to do it. And what they did is they actually built it into the gun. So as you see here, there's a separate lever, which is really cool. And if you can see, there's this part here that actually slides inside. So what you would do is you pack all your material in and then gently push it inside until you got it packed in really well. And that's how they load these. So they would fire, the 6 rounds that you'd get out of a revolver. And as you can see, loading these things in a battlefield, which they got pretty good at it, would probably be difficult. And once you fired off your shots, you're down to your hand weapons. So what traditionally would happen is if they had, like if you had maybe a cavalry or an officer, you'd have more than one of these and be able to pull them out and shoot a couple at a time and get them reloaded. But they were rare to get. These handguns, like I said, were hard to get a hold of. Another huge difference between the Colt version and this one here, the Griswold and Gunnison, is the fact that you have the brass right here. So metal was hard to come by in the South, and where you have Colt use steel, they had to use brass because that's what they could get their hands on. So that's what differentiated it big time from looking at it with the Colt version. I think it's an elegant weapon. I think they did a phenomenal job, well, Colt obviously, and then being copied by them. But it's funny when we look at the Peacemaker, the 45 caliber revolver that they used in the West, and you see them in movies. Those are the ones we see the gunslingers always using. But these you would have seen more often, or actually the Colt variant, you would have seen more often in the Wild West. These were older. These came like in the 1860s. And then later on, you had the 1873, which you had the Colt revolver come in. The other ones were more expensive. They were hard to get a hold of. And these were used in the war, so there were a lot of them around. So what would happen is you'd see a lot of percussion revolvers, which you don't necessarily see in most movies. You know, you'll see maybe Clint Eastwood had a good, in his movies, spaghetti westerns, he'd use percussion revolvers, which were pretty cool. But then, you know, he'd use the conversion types where, you know, these were bored out and you would actually put the shells inside, much like the Peacemaker had, the 45. Or he would have the interchangeable over here, the barrel, not the barrel, but the part where it holds the bullets. What I like about this version here too, that's really neat about it, is they actually use one of these, the Griswold and Gunnison, in the show Hell on Wheels. And that was nice to see that. They used it in the first couple of seasons because he is a Civil War officer. And they gave him this to use because that's what he used in the war. And then later on, he switched over to a Remington. And now the Remington had the ability to take this out. So you would actually replace the whole part here as opposed to loading the bullets inside. So that gave them their ability to speed load, so to speak. So getting back to this model that we have right here, if you want to call it a model, but or this representation of the actual gun, it has some really nice heft. It weighs a couple of pounds. It's die-cast metal, so pot metal as they call it, so you can't fire it, obviously. But as a replica, this is amazing. It is a great talking piece. If you want to know roughly what these felt like to hold, it's amazing. If you've seen them in museums or if you're into guns or anything like that, it's really a nice piece. These are legal where I am to have replicas. It's funny, in some places, replicas are not legal. Denix does make a variety of older, going back to like flintlock pistols, all the way to newer, like AK-47s. So depending on the laws where you are, you can choose the replica that you like. I am more into the Western style, and I just love them. I think this one is phenomenal. Even all beat up like the way it is right here, it adds some patina to it. So I'm really enjoying them. I love them. I think if you're looking for something that would look nice on a mantelpiece, if you're into guns or if you're into the Wild West, or just you want a talking piece, I definitely recommend these. You can find them online. They're relatively inexpensive. Now, when I say inexpensive, you're in a couple $100 range, between $100 to $200. Some of their rifles can go a lot more expensive, but I definitely recommend it for someone who's into replicas and who likes to collect guns and not necessarily have to have a gun permit or carry something that is a live firearm. So definitely recommend this. I would like to thank you for sticking through the review. I also want to thank all my subscribers. Check out some of my other videos, and you have yourself a great day.